and welcome. This is going to be a video that goes through some of the basics of Typst, and this will kind of outline what it takes to write a document. Let's say you're a student or a professional and you want to write a document, reference some figures, type some equations, maybe a table, and you just want to do some basic formatting. I'm going to walk you through some of the basics of Typst and some practices. They may not be the best practice, but they're an effective practice. And for the purposes of this presentation, I was going to use the online editing environment. So if you go to Typst.app, app, you can see, if you go there, you can open up this dashboard by, you create an account and you log in and you'll see this dashboard. So the dashboard has a couple options. You can create a document, start from a template, or even take a Word document or a latex document, and you can upload those documents and it'll try to convert that. For now, we're going to start with an empty document because I want to show you some ways to generate content to get you started. So with that, let's call this example 2. Now, when you're in this environment, there's 2 main windows. There's really actually a third, but we'll talk about that in a second. But the 2 main windows are the coding window on the left, the preview window on the right, or panes, maybe it's a better way to call them panes. Over here to the left, you have the current files that are in your project. You can upload figures, other documents you're going to reference, maybe a template file, and other documents. We'll get into this in a little bit, but know that you can explore the files of your project here. So let's say I was writing a paper for school or work, and maybe the first thing I want to do is create a heading, and I can use the lorem function to generate just some bulk text. And so very quickly now I have an introduction and some text. You can add more headings this way, but I'm going to name these headings based on what it is that I'm doing. So for now, let's just talk about, just generating some content. What's really nice about about Typst is that you're going to use this hash marker or, pound sign, or however you want to refer to it. And that's going to call a function. And those functions are going to have arguments that do something in Typst, and we're going to make use of this powerful these powerful functions in this example. So the first thing I want to do is probably talk about how you can organize a document. And so with this, you could do numbered and unnumbered lists. So let's talk about creating an outline. So if I want to create an outline, I might want to add some lists like introduction, maybe some methods, maybe I'll talk about some results, draw some conclusions, right? And so I can make it numbered. The other thing I could do is if I don't want it numbered, I can make it a non-numbered list. And if I use the tab key, it'll make them sub a list. So I could say, prior art, what's new, right? And so I can create this outline and it'll help me generate what I want to type as I type. But nothing fancy here, just showing you some syntax. I could bold these with some stars. I can italicize them with some underlines, right? There's a good number of formatting options here, and that'll allow you to kind of highlight what it is you want to do. If you want to make something specifically colored, you can call it text. And I can make it red or blue, right? So that way, if I want to highlight something, or emphasize something while I'm typing it, I can come back and I can say, magenta is not built in. Here is cyan. Okay, so there you go. So there's some default colors. If you want, you can call an RGB function. See how red defaults to that RGB? That's the hexadecimal code for HTML. So there's many different coloring options. And for now, we'll just leave it at this, but we can cover that in a later video. All these different coloring options. Another thing you might want to do is you might want to add figures. So figures generally are centered and have a caption. So let's just put a little lorem in here, and I'll add a figure. And I hit enter, and look, it tells me, oh, these are some options I can use. So caption, right, all this stuff. So let's just do caption, and I'm going to call it, this is a figure of the Typst logo. Okay. And in here, I'm going to want to create an image, but I don't have it. I don't have the image uploaded. So the first thing I want to do is upload this image. So to upload the image, we can come over here and to our files, click the upload button. And I'm going to bring a Typst logo in here. I'll upload another logo. Why not? We'll do this one. Okay. So now I've got two images. If I click them, it'll preview them, but for now, there's no point because there it is. There's one logo. There's another logo, right? And so it's saying I'm missing an argument, path to the image. Well, since it's in the main directory, I'm going to just call it Typst.png. And look, it appears. I can call the width to be, 3 inches or 2 inches. Or centimeters, right? And so this would be handy if you maybe you want a percentage, 50% of the line width, or 20% of the line width, right? You can make these calls. So for now, let's just do something really small, 20% of line width. You can see that this is a figure of the Typst logo. It's the caption, and it appears below the figure, right? So I'm gonna minimize the current files so we get back to our main window. Another thing I did is it automatically numbered the figure. So let's do another figure. Caption. Okay, the BamDone logo. And I'm going to do an image of BamDone.png. And the width is going to be 20%. So there you go. So they're the same exact width, or 20% of the line width. And the figure name appears here, and it just shows up. Now it's really cool. Watch this. I'm going to take this. It'll become figure 1 when I move it above. I'll cut it and paste it above. It automatically renumbers in the order in which it appears. Something you might also want to do is label these figures. So I'll show you my practice for labeling figures. What you do when you add a label is you're going to add these angle brackets after the argument. And for these are figures, so I'm going to call this figure BamDone. I'm going to call this figure Typst logo. Okay, so these are labels. Now, the labels are going to be used in text to refer to it. So I could say the BamDone logo is, let's get rid of this space. The BamDone logo is seen in, and I use the @ sign, and look what appears. These are the current labels that exist. Now, right now, all we have is figures, so you're just going to see figure onlys. But if I type fig, it will filter out by the first character. So this is why I use the fig as a prefix. When I do more later, you're going to see that the reason why I do this, but it's nice to be able to filter just by the name. So I click that. And the Typst logo is seen in Typst logo, enter, period, and there they are. Now, again, I can take these figures, cut them, paste them, and look, the figure numbers have readjusted. Now, it doesn't like it when you have duplicate labels, so you can't have duplicate labels. So that's just one thing to consider, and it's nice that it will warn you that exists, and ultimately it prevents you from compiling your document with duplicate labels. But it's just good that it directs you to exactly where the problem is. Maybe another thing you want to do is create a table. So let's do tables. So tables, let's do some more text. And tables are going to be centered, right? We want the caption to appear above the table. And, we want to format them so that they're readable. So the first thing you could do is just put a table in, but it won't center it. It won't add a caption. But what we did have that was centered and captured were figures. So we're going to use the figure environment. And I'm going to call this, an example table. Let's do this. Okay. And in the figure environment, we're going to want to do something like tell it what it is. So it's going to be a kind, and we're going to call it a table. And then I'm going to use the table function. Okay. So in the table function, I'm going to have to call out how many columns, say 3, and then I'm going to start issuing content. Okay, so let me hit tab key. So I could say, column A, and I can do column 2, and then I can do column 3. All right, and then I can add some text. So lorem 3, and I'm just going to copy this. Oops. There. Okay, so if I scroll down, you'll see there's your table. And the table has everything, placed in. They're centered, right? And the text is sitting in there. It would resize. So if I make it 4 or 5, right, it recenters all of them. You might want to bold the first row. And so that would be good. You could also underline, but for now, let's just bold them. Now, the one thing I don't currently like about the table is that the caption is underneath the table, and I don't like the appearance. I don't like the grid. I'd prefer to have, just a horizontal line underneath the first row. All right, so what we'll have to do is remove the stroke. And that gets rid of all of the lines. And then the other thing I can do is create a horizontal line. And the H-line argument says start 0 stroke, and we'll do, 1 point. I have to add a comma. And I used the wrong, I used square. I need to use parentheses. And so the table H line, right, you can tell it where to start. I could say start at 2, right? Start at 1. It's 0 enumerated, right? And so this gives you a little control over, how you would present the table and the content that's in it. I could put math and images in here too. Anything in these square brackets, anything in there can be, I can do an equation. So, we'll get to that in a second, but for now, let's just say I want to use a Greek symbol alpha, right? Or, I want to put in an image. I can always do that. You just by taking these images here. Maybe I can just do this. And There's an image, right? So I can put a bunch of content in these tables very easily. Okay, so then the question becomes, how do I take the table and put the caption above? Because I don't want it on the bottom. Well, to do that, that comes back to this thing where we defined it as a table, this thing called kind table. And so we can type some code at the, I like to put all of my formatting code for my entire document at the very top of my document. That way I know to come back here and I understand what it's doing. So let's make a comment and let's say something like format tables. Okay, in here we're going to use this thing called a show command. Now the show is a rule that redefines the look of everything below it. So for this I'm going to do figure where, right? And then I want to do the kind, anything that's a table. That's what I'm going to be reformatting. And then the rule is that I'm going to set the figure caption to be positioned at the top. And just like that, all the tables will have a caption at the top. And then, I'm going to use the label here. So I put a label tab and we'll call this example table. So let's say let's create a new line, the table, the results are shown in, and I just do at tab, and now all the tables appear, and we only have one, and table one, period, right? And so now these are linked, the tables are linked to the label. Okay, so what's next? The next thing you might want to do is maybe have some equations. I don't know. And your equations could be, very simple. You could say, let's do some lorem. And let's say, let's see. The first thing we would do is let's do an inline equation. An inline equation is one as we see here. And so I do a $sign and it automatically auto-completes. And I can say fx equals sine of x, period. And look at that. I've got an equation. It's in line. I can add some lorem. Let's do 10 lorems of characters. I can do another inline equation. Right. And that's really nice that you can do these nice formatted inline equations. Now let's say I had an equation that I want out of line. So an out of line equation is one where the $signs and the equation have some padding. So let's write the same one before. See how it's in line, but if I add a space, it makes it out of line. Now, one could do this. You could type everything just like this, but the readability of your code isn't going to be great. So my best practice is whenever I do an out of line equation is to format it this way so that I have my out of line equation kind of out of line of my code. That way I know that this is an out of line equation. So let me just generate a couple of these equations. Let's do some things to show you some of the formatting. Let's do g of x equals, I don't know, an exponential. Or let's just do e to the power 3x, right? Or I can do EFGH equals integral of, let's do from 0 to 1 of, I don't know, tangent, I don't know, something like this. And then upright dx. And let's do another one. Let's do a Greek thing. Let's do delta equals square root plus y squared. Okay, so we've got a couple equations. But this is great, but I want to refer to these equations. So let's create some labels. Let's call this equation sign. I don't know. We'll call this equation exponent. Call this equation integral. And we'll call this equation distance. Right? And so what's nice is now I've got all these labels, but I don't have any numbers to the right. So I need to create a numbering rule for the equations. Now, if you're using a template, right, you might already have this built in the template. So I'm just going to do some equation formatting, but we don't have a template. So I'm going to create the code that you need to show, how it's numbered and, what's it going to say in text when you call it out. So for this, you're going to do, set. We're going to set the math.equation, and we're going to call the numbering, and I think it says string. So the string we're going to use is something with the number 1. 1 represents the number that you're going to use. So I like the numbers in parentheses to the right. Now, if you like the number with a period, you can do that. If you just want a number, you can do that. But I like it this way. Okay. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is tell it what the supplement, what is it's going to say in text. So for me, the supplement will be something like equation. So anywhere when I reference an equation, I want it to say like equation 1, equation 2, right? And so this will help with, referring to equations in text. So that's what the supplement is. You could do EQ, right? And we'll mess with this in equation in a second. So come down to the bottom, and we're going to reference to these equations. So, so we say at. So the first equation, the first formulation is seen in, and we'll do EQ. Now what I've done is I've basically filtered which ones I want to reference. So I want to do sign, right? And you see, look, it says equation 1, right? The second formulation seen in equation 2, right? And if I move them around, right, this won't be true anymore. First equation is equation 2, second is equation 1, right? So you can move these around, and it automatically keeps track of which label calls out which formula. And so this is just a nice way of doing that. Now, if I don't like the word equation, I can call it EQ, right? Period, and it will do that too, right? So this is just a nice way of getting a way of calling the equations as you use them, and it's very powerful. So I guess maybe another thing you might want to do is talk about prior art. Right, and so if you're talking about prior art, you're going to make reference to some pre-existing citations, papers, books, articles, whatever, right? And so Typst leverages the BibTeX environment or BibTeX language, which is generally used in LaTeX documents. And so what we're going to do is let's create a document. We're going to call it refs.bib. And look, Typst already recognized this is a LaTeX file, right? And in refs.bib, it's empty right now. And we're going to want to put whatever files that we need, like whatever references. So here's some example references. Here we go. I'm going to just paste them in here. And I can go through this in another video, more detail about how do you write these BibTeX documents? How do you get them? In general, you can export them from Google Scholar, or you can get them from whatever research site, or you can write them yourself by hand. A lot of people do that. They just write them up themselves. So here's just some examples, right? There's, all this data here, titles, authors, etc. And what's really critical here is the keyword. So this is the citation key that you'll use when you refer to it in your document. Okay, so don't worry if you haven't memorized them, because when you're typing, a list will appear that will help. So in here, we're going to load it, we're going to use a command called bibliography. And in here, we're going to refer to refs.bib. Okay. And so automatically you put in, look, it already put in bibliography. And let's just do some lorem. And we'll say something like, the first paper was at. And so we're going to use Bryson. There we go. So first, well, that was a book. So let's just do this, the first book. Okay. The second book is that one, and a notable paper is shown in, I think I had column. Cool. And so look, as quickly as I put these @ signs in, the bibliography was built, and there's probably a thing here that says style, and look at all the styles you can select from. There's a tremendous number of styles. So you could just choose which one you want. I could say IEEE, maybe it's International Institute. There it is. I could do that, and it'll do it that way. I can do AIAA. I can do MLA, Chicago full notes, right? So look at that. It puts all of the footnotes above, and it puts them on the page that they belong, and then it has them here. You can also do, instead of that, you could do MLA. It's the 9th, right? So you could do, see, it says, now what puts them in parentheses, right? It's really nice. You can do that. So whatever one you want to use, you can go after and choose. There's a lot of flexibility there. Okay, so now that you basically have all the working elements of your paper, the next thing you might want to do is create a title and an author list, and maybe it's a double column paper, right? And I don't want to have to remodify my whole document to make it a double column paper. So let's just talk about some more advanced formatting to get you to generate the document in a way that basically creates a title and all of those standard things that you would see at a normal paper. So the first thing we would do to create a title is we would make use of the align function, because they're generally centered aligned. And I want to make it big. So let's make 24 point. We'll make it really big. And the title might be, "This is an amazing title." Okay. And what's wrong here? Missing argument body. Oh, well, maybe I need to do it this way and put a comma here. Or no. Okay. Text 24 modifies this content block that says, "This is an amazing title." Okay, I could write it this way, but I could also do upper. Let's make it a function. Upper, use the function upper. And what's the issue here? Converts a string. Oh, so this needs to be a string. So now it's uppercase, right? Or I could just make it all lowercase, right? Or I could do what I usually like for a title is, what is it I usually like to do? I like to do small caps. That's what I use, small caps. So now you have all capital characters, right? There's your title. Okay. So now you might want to add, and maybe you have a few authors. You want to add a few authors. Okay, so we did a table before, but Typst has a separate environment for spacing content in a nice way, and it's called the grid environment. And it arranges content to a grid that you're going to specify. So it's similar to tables, but it allows you to it gives you a little more control. It doesn't have a caption. You're not doing a caption, so it's a separate. It allows you to have some more freedom without messing with what already is a table. And you can assign gutter placement. Grid is more about locating things on pages than it is about organizing data. That's probably a good way of thinking about it. So in the grid, the first thing you want to do is tell it how many columns. So let's say we have, 3 authors, okay? So we'll do, we're going to have columns, and we're going to do 3 authors. So there's one thing that grid has that's really nice. If you want to equally space them, you can do this 1FR, 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 1. So this is like saying, I want to equally space, the entire, each one of these columns, like 100%. So it's like, basically I'm saying, I'm going to do, if I have let's say the width of the page is 100 units, whatever it is, I can say I want the 33.3%, the 33.3%, and the other 33.3%. And I'm going to fill these based on this weighting value that I'm giving. One thing I like to do is while I'm working on anything grid, I want to kind of see, I just want to see what the grids look like. So this is a good example. And then let's do that real quick. So the other thing is to give a little space, let's give it 2 points of space between the grids. And there's some content here. So let's do A, B, and C. Okay. So if we look at our document, let me hide this content window. If we look at our grid, we have three equally spaced grid pieces, and each one is a content. So we have a content A, a content B, and a content C, A, B, and C. I just filled them yellow, but if I say none, it goes away, right? But it's just easier to see the grids when I have that turned on. That just helps me. The other thing I want to do is I want to make sure the authors are actually all centered aligned. So I'm going to do align center. And what that will do is now each one of these grid pieces is now a centered align block. I would like to make it a little more readable in the code. So what I want to do is I'm going to tab this over, and I'm going to make these on separate lines. Okay. And so you may have author 1, author 2, author 3, right? And then you might want to know what organization they're with. So I'm going to create a new, break this apart in my code, and I'm going to add a space with the slash. And now I'm going to do, organization. I'll just do org because it's going to be easier to just type quickly. Okay, but then they might have addresses. Okay, and I need to do this. I need to create new lines. Okay, so now you have your authors. The other thing you might want to do is maybe you have more than 3. Maybe you have 5 authors. So I could take this whole grid and paste it, and I get 3 more. But like I said, I have 5, not 6. So let's just get rid of one of these authors. Turn this to 2, right? And there I can have, authors 4 and authors 5. Okay, and I'm going to differentiate these, I'm just going to make this one, I don't know, red, right? So it's just a different color. Ultimately, we can turn them off, but it'll just help understand what I'm working on. The other thing is there's this big gap here, right? And so I can remove that with a bit of vertical space of -1, like character height. And so that just brings these grids together much more compactly. Now, I don't really like how this is spaced. So another thing you could do is I could say, well, I really want to bring these other authors in a little bit closer. So maybe let's do some blank blocks on the sides. And then when I do that, I'm going to have to create an empty block on one end, and I'm going to have to create an empty block on the other end. And then one block is, the first block's 3 centimeters, then it's equally like weighted 1 with the other, and then the other is 3. So let's just play with this. Let's say I get 2. Let's just make this 2. What it does is it makes this one twice as big as this one, right? Or 3. 3 times as large, right? Right? I can do that. If I make them both 2, it's the same thing as saying they're both 1 because they're equally weighted, right? But these are centimeter distances, so I can make them 2 centimeters, right? And these are just empty blocks that I'm basically playing with. So that's essentially, kind of a little more look at the 1FR, this way of filling and weighted grid. And this is just a good way of like building out content. So let's turn these fills off, make it none. Right, and now I can basically just put in my author list, right? I can put my name, the names of the authors in, the organizations, and they appear. Another thing you would generally have in a paper is an abstract, okay? And an abstract doesn't go, in some templates, it doesn't go all the way left and to the right. It goes, it's like center placed, and it's not quite as wide as the page. This is another good place to use the grid. So I'm going to do a grid. This is going to be the abstract, and I'm going to do columns, and I'm going to do, I don't know, let's do 1 centimeter, 1FR, 1 centimeter, and then I'm going to have some content here for the abstract. So abstract, and we'll do some more. Okay. But remember that first column is 1 centimeter, so we need to actually have a block before and a block after to show that these are empty blocks on either side. Right, let's do the fill and the column gutter so I can show you. So fill, let's call it red, right? And so I have a block that's 1 centimeter. That's this block. I have a block that's 100% like weighted. And that's the center. And I have one to the right. Okay? And this is all good and all, but the abstract, the title, I want that bold. So I'm just going to bold it with some stars on the sides. And now I know that's my abstract. Okay? So let me just do none. So now my abstract's there. And so now I have a really good start at a paper, right? And the other thing, man, I mean, there's so many ways you can customize this. Why don't we make sure the paper prints? How about that? So this, let me just put some labels here. So this one was the column. This was the author list. And then this one here is the abstract. Okay, and like I said, we want to have the paper be able to be printed. So let's format the paper. For this, we use set because we're going to basically set everything below this, right? So set page, and I might just put that there. The first thing we're going to do is paper. And I want it to be US letter, because that's where I'm located. It automatically just adjusted. I have margins, right? And the margins are going to be in the X direction, which is like left and right. And that's going to be, I don't know, 0.75 inches. And the Y, which is the height, we'll do 1 inch. Okay. And then maybe I want to number the pages. So I'll number them, put a 1, right? And you can see now I've got a 1, and I've got a 2, and a 3. I could put them in parentheses, and it will put a little parenthesis at the bottom, but I don't really want to do that. You can also do /1. So 1/1 means 1 of 3, 2 of 3. If I'm doing a draft, this is really handy because when I print it out, if I don't staple it, right, I'll know if I was missing a page or not, right? But you know, so let's keep it that way for now. But most papers, when you submit them, aren't going to be that way. So let's just leave it. Another thing you can do is put a header. Why not? Let's do a header. So we'll do header, and I can do, you know, BamDone. Example 2. I can do that. And now that header exists on every page. I can align it in the center, or I can align it in the right. Or I could do a grid, right? So in the header, I could actually put a grid in here. So I could do, you know, this thing, place a grid, you know, columns 3. Get rid of that. Well, instead of doing 3, I want to do like 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. And then I'll have what's on the left, right? I can do that. And then I can do center, and I can do right. Remember the center, I'm going to need to align it. And on the right, I'm going to need to align that. Right, and it's probably easier to read if I do it this way. Right, and so now I have this very complicated header, right, for every page. Right, so you can do that too. You know, maybe the title. You know, maybe we wanted the title of the page. Maybe I want the title to be bold. Maybe I can do repent. Or italic. Let's do italic. Right? I don't know. I mean, you can mess. I mean, there's a lot of freedom here, right? And okay, so the other thing you might want to do is justify. You know, maybe I want to justify all the text. Like, I don't like left ragged. Maybe I want to format my entire paper. Maybe I want to format all the text to be justified. So I want to format the text. So to do that, you would say set the paragraphs. I don't want that. Justify true. And just like that, everything is justified. I can, what else can we do? We can change the font. Let's change the font. So to change the font, you go set text. I didn't want to autocomplete that. Font. I don't know. Let's pick a font. I don't know. Barlow. Let's pick a font. Okay, that's a nice sans serif font. You can change the size if you want. 10 point for the body. Right. So now it's a little more compact. Or a different size. It did a whole document, right? In just one command, and it gives you this nice real-time preview. I think another thing we could do is, I don't know, we could make it, maybe we can format the document so that way the whole document's 2 columns, right? Maybe you don't want a full width page paper. Maybe you want a double width paper. And so one way you can do that is use a show rule. And let's just use the word rest. So that's the rest of the paper. We're going to want to do this under. So if I do this before the title and the abstract, it'll force it to 2 column. I only want to do it after the abstract. Do I want to make it double column? So for that, I'm going to do show rest, and I'm going to convert that to columns, and I'm going to do rest. And just like that, the whole page, the whole document now is double column, bibliography, right? I mean, there's a lot going on here. So these syntaxes and these coding script, so this is make the document 2 column page format, right? These blocks of code and and the way this all is formatted takes a while to get used to, but hopefully this video is useful and it shows you some ways to do what you might want to get done to write a paper. So I hope you found this useful, and if you feel free to rewatch it, go to sections of this video. I'm going to soon, it's probably not today, but soon I'll create a GitHub page with all of the sample code from all of these videos, so that way you can access the code. And I'll put a link below the YouTube video so you can just access it. That's probably the easiest way. So you can just access this type file. So with that, thank you for watching this video, and please put a comment below or let me know if you have any other questions. It may be something I don't know how to do, and it'll just prompt me to learn more. So I just thank you for your time, and you have a good one.